the cloud. Yeah. Now we're live. We're not live on Facebook though, but it is being recorded.
You're going through the steps.
I am.
I can appreciate that.
See if
I love a good SOP.
see if that'll do. It's still like yeah, it doesn't. You see that, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Little technical difficulties, but we are recording and we are recording to the cloud. But like I want to title it. All right. Let's just go with it. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm here at your leisure, so
All right. I think these guys have had enough. Welcome to Tipple Tuesday. Very slow reaction there. Um, I am very excited to announce my new best friend up here, Lauren Patz from Redwood Empire.
that's correct.
All right.
Check, check. Both of those
Redwood
things are
Empire.
true.
Um, we were actually talking for quite a bit, and I was, we probably should have saved some of that from up here, but we know we both now identify as janitors at our various positions that we hold at our day jobs. But I think we are here to try and talk about some whiskey, and I think everybody needs to get to know you a little bit better. So I think I had asked, like, you said, or the official title is Master Blender, but you're like, well, that's just like a tip of the iceberg of what you do. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us about yourself and what you do, and how did you end up at Redwood Empire?
Wow, what a great question. So open-ended, so many things to say. My name is Lauren Patz, and I am the master blender for Redwood Empire whiskey. I've been distilling for over a decade, so good amount of years. Still many to go, hopefully. But I actually kind of found my way to this industry in a slightly disjointed manner. I never really thought that this was a direction that my life was going to take, but I was lucky enough to find it. I was working at a chocolate factory, and my job there was to do pairing. So I was pairing chocolate and pretty much whatever anybody wanted: cheese, crackers, beer, wine, and of course, spirits. So, as somebody who likes to kind of be knowledgeable about the things that I'm, explaining or talking about, I started to do a deep dive into whiskey as a category and kind of like the specifics around each individual type, and really wanting to be able to present that while we were doing these pairings. And I remember one specific event. It was at a like a whiskey cigar club. It was like a whiskey, cigar, and chocolate event, and it was a magical moment that made me think that I think spirits is more of a direction that I'm interested in going in. So I ended up leaving the chocolate and looking for a distillery to join. And I started working, I think it was, yeah, as a tasting room manager first at at Spirit Works Distillery, which was a smaller distillery that kind of like focused on gin. We made whiskey as well, but focused on gin. And then I was with them in that position for about a year. A year after that, I was full time on the floor, and a year after that, I was head of production and head distiller there. So it was like a good fit, I think, in terms of my actual skill set. I'm very detail oriented. I love structure. I love communicating and making sure that things get done correctly, on time, safely. Like my two operating principles anytime we go in to answer anything is really safety first and then QA next. And then everything else can kind of follow in some other order. But those are really kind of the top of my expectations when we move forward within the distillery. In terms of my role, I think the titles that we have, like master blender, master distiller, a lot of times people have something in their mind of what the actual day to day looks like for those. But I would argue that for each individual, it's pretty different, like what you actually are responsible for, what you do. My job really is to run all day-to-day operations at the distillery. I run our team, I order all of our raw materials, I do all the scheduling, compliance, I try to make accounting happy, and move on from there. So I do the majority of kind of the leadership and management of all day-to-day responsibilities, of course. I also participate in doing the blending. So there's kind of like two parts to this equation. There's myself, the master blender, and then there's Jeff Duckhorn, our master distiller. And we really work as a team that kind of can tackle anything within the distillery. We come out into market and we can cover for each other and things like that. But it's really nice to have another person to taste with. Obviously, you guys get it. You're all here with other people to share this experience, which is really what spirits and beverage is all about. It's about people, about the stories. It's about enjoying time with them, all that good stuff. And so it's really nice to have kind of like a working partner that both trusts and values the contributions that I make. And we have a really good time together. And we taste through hundreds of barrels together and put some of the blends that we're going to taste together tonight.
Well said. So, especially about people, right?
Hmm.
Because one of my favorite things to say is whiskey is best shared,
Mm,
right? But I think, to sum up, you're a giant nerd like the rest of us, right?
definitely. Yeah,
So
for sure.
you had a magical moment with your spirits, which got you here, like the rest of us.
Mhm.
Right? That's why we all keep going. But that's fantastic. So you were also like you were saying that you lived in Japan for a while, like before.
I did. Yeah, I was an elementary school teacher in Japan. That was honestly my big life goal was to go over there and teach through the JET program, which I did. And then I told myself, "Wow, I peaked too soon, and I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life." But it worked out pretty well. I when I was there, I've always been, big into cooking and baking and things like that. I grew up in a winemaking family in St. Helena, Napa Valley, so like, this has always kind of been around and a part of my life. But in Japan, they don't have traditional ovens. It's not part of the traditional cuisine there, and also space is usually somewhat limited. And so I didn't have a place to really do baking. Of course, they have like bread machines and things like that, but I was more interested in kind of exploring other stuff. So instead of doing and pursuing baking, I went down like a confectionery path. So I would make chocolate and caramel, marshmallow, and that's how I ended up at the chocolate factory. Was when I moved back to the United States, I thought I might start my own company making chocolates. And I was like, well, I started a chocolate company, see how I feel about it, see how I like it. And then, quick, hard right into spirits, a little bit of a different direction.
Oddly enough, I don't think it's that hard of a right though,
Hmm.
right? Because I think there's a lot of crossover between all of that
Hmm.
and like probably what you do now.
Yeah. I mean, once you start palate training for anything, whether it's coffee or chocolate or wine,
Sure.
you can really apply that knowledge and that connection that you've built up between your brain and your palate in pretty much anything, including spirits. And so I do feel like that has been really beneficial overall. I do have a lot of confidence in my palate and my ability to kind of like discern different, chemical compositions and things like that, and just what I like for sure. So I'm grateful to have had that as an experience. But certainly, I thought it definitely wasn't what I thought I was going to end up as.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So Redwood.
Hmm.
So tell us about the company. Like what do you I mean, you said you had what was the gentleman's name, the distiller who you work with?
Jeff
Jeff.
Duckhorn. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So he's been with the company, I think 15 years, maybe a little bit longer now. And he started off in the accounting department. So we call him our recovering accountant. But he's always been really passionate about brewing beer, actually. So when they decided to build out a distillery, our company actually started off as a wine company. And in, I think around 2015 is really when they started to make whiskey. He kind of put his hand up as somebody who could get the job done, brought in some beer that he'd made from home.
probably crunched a few numbers while he
Yeah,
was at
for
it. Yeah.
sure. I mean, it's shocking how valuable that is to really
Absolutely.
understand the value of
Sure.
each grain of grain, each drop of liquid. I mean, you can make some really incredible decisions when you really know the value of what you're doing. But he's great. Anyway, so he's been around since the beginning. I've been with the team almost 5 years now. So I've been there for a little while. He and I have known each other our entire professional careers. So the distillery that I was working at was less than 10 minutes away from the original distillery that we had a Redwood Empire at. And so I've known and been on and witnessed kind of the whole life cycle of this brand. So Redwood Empire is actually a physical location. It's the small strip of coastal land that stretches right outside of San Francisco all the way up to the Oregon border. So it starts kind of at Muir Woods, which is where, cars drive through trees. They're really big trees. And it's the only place in the world where coastal redwood trees grow. And they're different than other types of trees because they get the majority of their water from fog, which is why they grow so tall and so spread out as they're trying to act as wind sails to kind of pick up as much of that moisture as possible so that they have a nice long drink themselves.
Interesting.
And that's really the inspiration on the brand side. So all of the SKUs, except for one, are named after individual redwood trees. So once they get to be, 1,000+ years old, we're like, you made it. You did a good job, tree. Here's a name so that you're no longer nameless. And so Pipe Dream, for example, is the name of a specific tree. Screaming Titan, also, each one of them is, except for Van Duzen. Van Duzen is a river that feeds into the Redwood Empire, but it's not a tree, it's a river.
Fantastic. They're looking like they need whiskey.
Sure. Don't we all?
Everyone's are you gonna get to the whiskey anytime soon, John? Yes, let's get to the whiskey, shall we? So what are we drinking here as number one? So I think you had said Screaming Titan is a type of tree.
Yeah, Screaming Titan is a tree.
A tree.
And
A tree.
It is a tree. It's actually a cluster of trees, but it is part of the redwood forest. So Screaming Titan is one of our limited time offerings. So it's not something necessarily that we have all the time, but it is a wheated bourbon. I think wheated bourbon has become quite popular in popular, whiskey drinking circles right now. I mean, Weller is essentially a wheated bourbon.
Never
Um,
heard of it.
Pappies, yeah, all that kind of stuff are have a higher wheat content. It's really interesting. Calling out secondary grains in a mash bill has really changed over the years. I believe it used to be like between 15 and 18% is when people would start doing that in the past. But now I'd say the minimum industry standard for calling out a secondary grain for a mash bill or part of marketing, things like that, is starts right around 20%. So this is a 30%. So it's a pretty high content of wheat. So what do we get when we add wheat? We get a lot of much lighter floral, even some kind of acidity, some brightness. I think a lot of stone fruit, apricot. I get honeysuckle, apple blossom. But my favorite thing about adding wheat to a mash bill is that it lightens some of the influence from the corn. So corn is so powerful, so overwhelming, and oftentimes really viscous, like very thick on the palate, which can be pleasant and elongate the finish. But I like a little kind of tart sweet action, and I think that that's really what wheat brings to the table when you're adding it into a mash bill. It also is easy mashing. If you have a secondary grain that's rye, it's quite a bit harder in order to get comparable conversion of sugars that then can be consumed and created into alcohol, that kind of thing. So a fun ingredient. I'd say wheat is probably my favorite grain to work with. I started my whiskey career actually making 100% wheat whiskeys. So I feel like very confident in what wheat brings to the
Yeah,
table. But
we have a few 100% wheat whiskeys up there, and we're quite a few fans here of that category for sure.
yeah.
For me, wheat is like a texture thing.
hmm
It makes it softer on the palate, I think,
hmm
for myself.
Yeah. Certainly softer than it would be with rye. It's a much more delicate flavor profile, and I think a delicate texture. My personal philosophy and approach towards flavor is a more delicate approach. I like something a little bit more soft, a little bit more fragile, still a lot of character, a lot of depth, but nothing really aggressive. I'm not like a really aggressive, like, punch you in the face type of person. I mean, you can be into that. It's totally fine. But I like something that coaxes you in a little bit more, that kind of like brings you into the experience you can really sit with, sip on, and kind of relax into. And I think that this is a very inviting, and gentle whiskey.
Gentle,
Yeah.
soft.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with all of that.
This is at 96%, so it's higher than what you might see typically, but none of our whiskeys are under 90. So even our core, so like the Pipe Dream, Emerald Giant, Lost Monarch, those ones are all at 90, and then these are all kind of different proofs because these are some of our limited time things.
What do you guys think? Yeah.
Drinkable?
So who's first time having Redwood Empire?
What?
Quite a few. Yeah. Same.
Excellent.
I was like saving this for when you got here.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm happy to be the first time. Yeah.
well, that is a easy drinking whiskey for sure.
hmm
Like that's definitely like summer sitting on the porch,
Yeah.
chilling.
The first three that we're going to be tasting are all bourbons. I'd say one of the things that I like pride myself the most on when it comes to our SKUs is that they are all very different. So particularly with bourbon, sometimes it's harder to pick out. I mean, they can be very similar in flavor profile, very similar in texture, and so I really find it a point of pride to like have very different expressions for each one of our SKUs across the board in terms of spirit category, but also within each individual.
So have you tried working with different types of wheat? Like obviously there's winter wheat and there's all different varieties. Something like buckwheat, which is maybe a little off category. Have you ever tried things like that?
Buckwheat is totally different.
I know. I have buckwheat whiskey at home. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
I no, not large scale with buckwheat. I've done like, white and red, a couple of different varietals of each one of those. But it is, and I've worked with spelt actually, which is a precursor to wheat and functions very similarly. They're all very soft. And so if you really want to embrace, enhance, and showcase the nuance of wheat in particular, you have to be very strategic in how you put the rest of your mash bill together and also how you approach your aging, barrel entry proof, all the decisions that we make when we're making whiskey. You have to be you have to be thinking about what you want to really achieve in the end. And because wheat is so soft and so gentle and such a light touch when it comes to its influence, you have to be even more so if you really want it to kind of bloom as a finished product.
Love it. All right. Should we? I'm letting you drive this bus as far as like what we're tasting and
Oh, yeah.
what we're doing
I
here.
guess we'll go down the row. I mean, we
Okay.
would want to mix it up and start choosing numbers at random. Okay, so the next that we're going to be tasting is our Pipe Dream 101. This is actually the most recent release that we have put out. Our flagship whiskey is Pipe Dream, which is not this product. Pipe Dream is really usually what people have interacted with when they first kind of drink our whiskey. And this is not just a difference in proof. So Pipe Dream 101, it references the proof. It is at 101 proof. So it's higher than the 90 that our core Pipe Dream is at. But that's not where the differences end. This is a completely different composition of liquid. So if I was to use words like distiller's select or distiller's, specialty selection or something like that, this is what I would consider to be that. It has a higher component of older liquid. It has more of our own distillate. So we do a blending of purchased and produced whiskey. We have about 25,000 barrels of whiskey in inventory. So we do have a wide range of liquid that we get to play around with. We make about 14 barrels of whiskey every day now that we're in our new facility. So we do make a good amount of whiskey as well. But we do have some purchased stuff and we do blends of both. So the first two that we're going to be having are blends of purchased and produced. The next three are all going to be grain to glass, and then the last one will be another blend. So this has a higher concentration of our own distillate in it, and a much higher concentration of older distillate in it. So our core pipe dream is a 4 to 14-year-old blend. This pipe dream 101 is minimum 5 years, but it does have a larger portion of the older liquid, like the 8 and 10 year in there as well.
All right. Anybody drink this one yet? Try this one yet? Couple, yes. What do you guys think?
For me, right off the bat, you can really taste the difference between the two, right? I mean, you
Absolutely.
really experience that difference with the wheat element in there. With the Pipe Dream 101, it has much more of that creamy richness to it that's coming from the corn, that weight, that viscosity that's going to be coming from the corn. It also has some really interesting, more like baking spice to it, a
Mm.
little bit more kind of like cinnamon in there, a little clovey, not quite as bright or light or floral. And just
I'm
like,
getting a little bit, I don't know if anybody else gets it, but sometimes with older whiskeys and they're blended in, you can kind of get a little bit of that funk in there,
mm,
which I absolutely love.
hmm.
So I'm definitely finding, I don't know if I know. What do you guys think? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best things that we've put together, specifically on the bourbon side. It's just so decadent. I like to think of this
Yes.
like if I had one word to
That's good.
describe the Pipe Dream 101, it would be like luxe. You know, it just
Mm.
feels like velvety and rich, but a really fun product to put together. This one is like one of my favorite blends to, first of all, taste for because I get to taste all the components that go into it. But also the end result is also really, really fun. And it feels like you've achieved something here, you know?
Mm, yes. Well, you have. Tastes fantastic.
Thank you.
The taste lasts a long time.
Mm,
Yeah. It's got a nice long finish to it.
yeah. But you still get that nice little whiskey hug. You know what I mean? Just like that. Like a mash bill stuff.
Look,
Yeah.
so just one the question coming in from Jesse is he's wondering if there's various whiskeys that go in various components and what comprises those various components.
Yeah. This is where the spreadsheets come in.
See?
There is an incredible network of scaffolding that we use as part of like the guiding force when we're creating blends, but they also generate what the grain composition is for the mash bills. That's why not every mash bill that went into that wheated bourbon is at 30%. In fact, the majority of the wheated bourbon that went into there was a higher amount of wheat in that mash bill. So like we do a barely legal bourbon at like 51% corn, 45% wheat, and the rest is probably malted barley or maybe a little bit of rye in there. So these are several different mash bills that have been pulled together and blended, and so the mash bill that is on that bottle reflects what the holistic, yeah, concentration is for what is being blended together. It's a great question, and that's part of the reason for the core in particular, I rarely say like the exact mash bill for it, not because I'm trying to be, mysterious, but it's generally because it changes a couple of percentage points
Sure.
each batch. We're really blending for consistency of flavor and texture as opposed to just like straight up every single time it has to match this
Yeah, and
composition.
it's similar to like when you were talking about cooking at home and stuff like that too. It's similar in that aspect, or at least it's relatable to me. It's like I don't necessarily measure everything every time,
Hmm.
but I can reproduce that same flavor every time. That's very similar.
Totally. It's exactly the same. So we do the calculations for what's in the bottle. And one of the things that's really important to us, especially on the limited time offerings, is transparency. So on these bottles, it says what the mash bill is. It says all the information that we could possibly give to you, like what type of barrel treatments each one is going for, obviously the proof, age statements, that kind of thing.
I also forgot to tell you when the audience asks a question, we
Mhm.
just repeat it so that people out in podcast land can actually hear the question.
I know. Usually, to be honest,
Sorry.
this was hard for me because when I'm typically presenting, I'm a much more like engaged with the audience.
We can still do that.
So I was like, I don't, that aspect of it was tricky because I said I was an elementary school teacher. I love a good quiz. Um, and I was like, oh, I don't want to just be talking up here. So good to know. Get ready to answer all my questions.
That's fine. You can ask away, and the audience will engage you and ask questions as well. We just repeat them just so that podcast people, like a year from now when they're watching this, they'll be like,
Sure.
oh, I understand what the question is.
Got it.
That's all. I forgot to tell you ahead of time.
I'll leave that to you.
All right, that's all good. That's all good.
Awesome.
Fantastic. I love both of those expressions. I know we're about to try the third one,
Hmm.
but something that I'm noticing, and I've noticed before as well, you guys do very well on our shells. The bottles are beautiful. The artwork is beautiful. It's fantastic. I kind of did read something about
Uh-oh.
where the artwork comes from. I don't know if you know this or not.
Well, tell me and then I'll tell you.
Any Compass Box fans in the audience? Do these bottles look similar? Stranger and Stranger,
That is true.
which also does the Compass Box art. So I didn't realize that until just recently, and I was looking at the bottles. I'm like, that explains it because there's a lot of Compass Box fans in here, and there's a lot of fans of Stranger and Stranger in general.
I
So
mean,
the bottles are beautiful.
from a design perspective, it's hard to beat Stranger and Stranger. They
Totally.
do an incredible job with a lot of different brands,
Absolutely.
and we are certainly no exception. I think they've done a spectacular job,
Well,
obviously under the guidance of our, marketing team and things like that, but really hit it out of the park in terms of brand message and look cohesion, right?
absolutely.
Part of this being a successful brand is that you check each mark. Obviously, liquid's got to be good, looks got to be good, story's got to be good. And to be even more honest, that's part of the reason why I joined Redwood Empire. I saw everything that I thought would make a successful brand. And obviously, I knew Jeff beforehand, so I had kind of an in there.
Sure.
But I saw it and I was like, that's something that I really believe in. That's something that I can get on board with. That's
Sure.
something that I want to be a part of. And so certainly that has factored into it.
And it shows.
Yeah.
It does show. I mean, what's in the bottle is obviously most important. And I think, even with the first two expressions we had, home runs, so like fantastic. Like I wasn't even going to bring up the optics, but as we're getting into it here, like just the whole complete package for you guys so far has been
Thank you.
incredible.
I thought you were going to bring up the artist's name, and I
No.
always feel bad. I feel bad. He is local for us. He is a local artist, and I never remember his name. Maybe this will embarrass me enough that I will.
I didn't realize that but I
Yes,
had known about the stranger and stranger part of it. And
he did the Kraken label and some other things. He does like this woodcut kind of style art, and so you can see that reflected here. They do kind of look a little bit
yeah,
like woodcuts.
it's very cool.
Yeah.
People who know Compass Box, like even the bottles, like everything is just
Oh,
top.
going off of the look of it, our VP of marketing always like, you've made it when people get tattoos of your label. We get one like pretty regularly.
That's
People
awesome.
getting tattoos with this on. In fact, the last time I was here, there was somebody in our distributor who got like almost like a full sleeve of artwork from Redwood Empire. There was like Emerald Giant, which is this one right here, and then also one that's not up here, the Foggy Barrel, which is our American single malt, which is like a full deer with mushrooms for horns. And it was awesome. He sent me like a full 360 on the arm, so it
So
was
who
cool.
who wants a tattoo? We'll make Redwood pay for it. You guys good?
Yeah. I've been to a couple of events like that where you
Sure.
show up and they got a tattoo artist and they're like, we're ready to claim you for life.
That's awesome. All right. So number three, what do we got?
This is going to be our bottled and bond offering. So this is our Grizzly Beast. And it's actually the name of two trees that have been smushed together. So this is again one that's not exactly one tree, it's two. But this is 100% grain to glass, our own distillate. Um, Everyone here knows the exact definition of bottled and bond, right? What is it?
50% ABV. What else?
One distillery, one
One distillery,
distiller,
one season.
one season,
Yeah.
and that's right.
4 years.
Minimum four
There
years.
you go.
There you
You
go.
got it.
A plus. Good job, everybody. I told you I was going to quiz you. I wasn't lying.
Yeah, she's not. This has suddenly got intense.
Yeah, I like it. I like it when you're sweating a
All
little.
right, now I'm sweating.
Um,
Here we go.
One of the things that we do differently, because we are in Northern California, our climate is quite a bit more temperate than maybe more traditional whiskey regions. And part of what that impacts is the maturation process. So it tends to kind of lean towards a slower maturation, a gentler maturation, and honestly, a much softer extraction from the wood itself. So we do a minimum of 5 years. So all of our distillate that we use, that we make in California, is going to be 5 years old. And this is going to be a spring season. So we haven't released a fall yet. Everything that we've released has been from the spring season. So there's 2 seasons, 6 months, spring and fall. And what's really interesting is a lot of our other stuff is pretty wide range of years. So I mentioned like Pipe Dream, 4 to 14 years. It's a good amount of time and liquid that you can use with it. This is really just a much narrower range. So you get a really clear idea of what was going on at the distillery at that time. And because of that, this SKU in particular, the Grizzly Beast and the Rocket Top, which is its rye counterpoint in the bottled and bond space, they change every year. So they're the most kind of collectory item of everything that we release. They are batched. So this is batch 4. We are doing batch 5 currently at the distillery, blending for it. So we just finished the blend on Rocket Top. Again, that's the rye. And then this week they are harvesting the Grizzly Beast. And that will kind of attenuate for the goal is 3 weeks, like a minimum of 3 weeks of attenuation and proofing, slow proofing. And then it'll go into bottle and it'll make its way out this direction. But what's really cool about these is on the back of the bottle, it'll show all of the specific information for that release. So it'll tell you what the grain composition is, the season, the date, the bottling date, cooperage, all of that kind of thing. And those things actually changed fairly drastically. So we've done like a 5 grain bourbon, 4 grain rye. We've done all kinds of fun stuff. Some of the more experimental things that we do at the distillery end up in these products. And I do a fair amount of like experimental things. So a lot of stuff with triticale. Again, I mentioned spelt kind of makes its way in there. I do some stuff with peat malt and smoked malt.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, of course. Unfamiliar. Purple corn, we're actually mashing and distilling some Bloody Butcher right now. So all of that stuff can kind of end up in some of these products. So they do change pretty regularly from time to time. But again, this is really can be a big stumbling block for distilleries. I mean, oftentimes when you're starting out at a distillery, you're doing some sort of sourcing at the beginning, and then you slowly make this transition, typically to have some sort of product that you've made 100% in-house. And so the very first project that I worked on when I came on board was the very first release of Bottled and Bond. So I came on, and my first assignment was like, all right. Let's put that blend together for Grizzly Beast and Rocket Top. And what better way to like really immerse yourself in a like a distillery's philosophy than to like taste through the majority of the barrels that they have on site when putting these blends together. So it was a really good introduction for me to what they had, what they were trying to do, and it also let me be a part of it. I wasn't there obviously when they distilled it, but I got to be there for the blending process and kind of like put a little bit of myself into the product with what they had been able to do on their own.
Well, that's part of blending. You
Yeah,
get to put your own signature on things, which is really cool.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I think
It's like creating art and history at the same time.
what's really fascinating is like when I think of like master distiller and master blender, when I think master distiller, I think operations, right? I think kind of like mechanical and really like functioning warehouse type stuff. And then when I think master blender, I think much more lab work. I think, much more about the finished product instead of like the starting and the midway and the making of it. But what I love about working with Redwood and working with Jeff is that all of that is blended together. You get to see and be a part and make decisions at every step of the process. And that's just not something that typically happens at a distillery when you have kind of like those two separate roles and responsibilities. So it's been really fun for me. And it really has allowed me to kind of like, you know, do whatever.
Yeah, you have to wear a lot of hats,
That's right.
right?
So many hats.
Yeah, whatever is coming your way that day is what you got to do.
Hmm.
If it means taking out the trash, so be it.
Yeah.
I get it. What else we got here?
So what do we think about Grizzly Beast?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I always get, I think what I'm a similar kind of tasting note. So we got a stone fruit comment. For me, there's like a real cherry note. It has like this kind of like cherry cola, like Dr. Pepper flavor to it. And I would say for like our flavor, like the distillate that we make in-house, that's a really running, constant thing.
Yeah, now that you said cola, I mean, I call that planting seeds, right? Once you like
Hmm.
suggest something, but that's really there.
Yeah.
That's really, it's like not even subtle. It's like really there. I like it. I love it. I mean, I love that note. So
Yeah. It's a really fun one, and I found it to be kind of like our house flavor is pretty much that flavor. And almost all the whiskey that I drink that has been made in house has that kind of like flavor profile, which is really fascinating.
very impressed by these.
Thank you.
Truly. Like I didn't, this is my first time trying them. So I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean it. These are really, really good.
I prefer honesty 100%. I'm not kidding. I've been in situations where people have like spit my own spirit out into my face.
Jeez.
Uh,
That's a little rude.
Well, I mean, typically that happened when it's like cask strength and they weren't
Well,
expecting it. And it wasn't necessarily like this is
but
so
yeah,
awful, like I can't handle it in my mouth anymore. But it still didn't feel great,
no,
both physically and emotionally.
yeah,
But I think with being a distiller, you have to have a lot of like you have to be very confident in the decisions you're making because you're not going to know the answer until like 4+ years down the road. So you got to really believe that
yeah.
what you're doing is the right thing.
And we've had a lot of distillers and products come through here that for lack of a better term, and there's nothing wrong with this whatsoever, but I think some people, or when we have discussions, we refer to it as the craft flavor.
Mm,
Like if you know what that, like kind of like that grainy a little bit almost, but none of these
yeah.
have that. This is like
Is this professional? What?
very.
Would you say this is polished?
What would you guys say? I don't care what I say. Anybody disagree? Anybody agree?
Yeah.
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 So you take their word for it.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate that. No, I really appreciate feedback in all its shapes and forms. I'd say I do a fair amount of spirits judging as well and have for quite a few years. And I would say holistically, the quality, particularly in the craft space, has exponentially increased. When I first started, when we're tasting through 100+ bourbons a day, and judging them, it could be a little rough when you're tasting 100+ 2-year-old bourbons. It's not all going to be
Sure.
hitting out of the park. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely.
A lot of wood shavings,
Yeah. So
all kinds of.
this store, Ryan and Randall is Ryan's partner when
Mm.
they make certain whiskeys or whatever. have submitted a few things to the International San Francisco
Hmm.
and just won gold medal for a rye that was finished in a Moxie soda barrel.
Oh, I've heard of that. I
They,
remember hearing about that. I think someone told me about that.
yeah. So they've done a lot of interesting things here as well. Like, but I know what you're saying with
Yeah.
when you get behind that thing to judge. One of the things I got to talk with Rachel Berry about because she's on a lot of those panels,
Hmm.
and she's like, "Oh yeah, there's some things that come to you, just like, why am I doing this?"
Yeah. Truly, the bar has been raised 100%. Like I've done the American Distilling Institute. I do the Tales of Cocktail judging, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I would say it's gotten quite a bit better. But I totally hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the confidence that these are pretty solid.
Yeah,
What I think is important is that you are bringing something to this industry. If you're making a product, there should be something that you're trying to communicate or say, or something that's different. You should be, giving something to it instead of just, making another bourbon or another rye. I mean, like, what is the purpose of you interacting and engaging with this space? And so I think that we have a really strong identity, and we think we have a really strong message that we're trying to get out. And I believe that's part of the reason why we have a flavor profile, like we have an identity.
fantastic.
All right, enough of this bourbon nonsense. Let's move on to some ryes. Do we have any rye fans in here? A few? I'm a sucker for rye.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
So I think we actually had a conversation
Hmm.
earlier about, like flavor profiles and why I love Scotch so much and the range of Scotch. And we got to talking about rye. And I think rye is up there for a lot of people too, because it does have such, to me personally, it seems like it has a very wide range of flavors. You have everything from like, floral and light, grassy, all the way to like your heavy baking spices and everything in between. It just
Hmm.
seems like there's a very wide range there.
And that is part of the reason why I love rye. It does have kind of a looser definition when it comes to consumer expectations. So there's a little bit more freedom on the production side to kind of try different things out and really kind of be more innovative and creative with it. With bourbon, there are some difficulties around that. One is I'd say bourbon is one of those things that people do have expectations of. And you kind of have to feed within that to some degree. And the second is that corn is powerful as a flavor, as a texture. It's really hard once you start adding corn into a recipe to tame it down so you can actually taste anything else that's going on in there. And so rye really lends itself more to that creative space because it's a little bit thinner. It does have a really strong flavor profile, but not so strong that you can't complement or enhance it with some of the other decisions that you're making, whether that be through grain selection, barrel selection, aging, all of that kind of business. But rye is pretty polarizing. I mean, I know a lot of people who really struggle with the category of rye. And in my opinion, it's because the rye that is the majority of the rye that's out there, it follows this very specific style of really aggressive, like really powerful, hyper tannic, really rough on the palate. And it feels like sometimes rye right now is mostly about sensation, right? Like feeling it in your mouth, like
It's
how it
what
feels.
cowboys drink.
That's right. I often likened it to hot sauce, right? So like sometimes people really like hot sauce, not necessarily because of how it tastes, but how it feels. Like they like that pain a little bit. And that's fair. I mean, that's the style of rye. I like some ryes that are like that as well, but I sometimes find that approach really distracts from the being able to taste it. Like you might be so distracted by how it feels, the sensation of it in your mouth, that you don't really get a chance to taste any of the nuance of the flavor that's going on. So our approach towards rye is to really try and soften some of that bite through, again, a variety of different methods and tools on the process side, and really allow the flavor of rye to be the star of the show.
I love
This,
that.
thank you.
Love that approach. Because
Um,
so like, some of my favorite ryes can be like light and floral,
mhm.
right? But you don't find a lot of them out there. There's a few.
Yeah.
There's actually one that's being made in Scotland now that I really like. It's kind of like light on that lighter and floral side,
Hmm.
but just by what you're saying, it gives a place for that to maybe shine.
Hmm. Yeah. So the first rye that we're going to taste tonight is probably the most divergent rye. It is a high malted barley rye. So it's still a straight rye whiskey. It's 67% rye. This one is. Each lot is a little bit different, but this one's 67% rye. And then I think it's 31%. Yeah, 31% malted barley and a lot of different malted barleys. We use almost exclusively brewer's malt instead of distiller's malt because we really want to get some bang for our buck when it comes to character. So there's a lot of chocolate malt. There's some caramel in there. We do have some like Vienna and Munich as well, but a lot of variety when it comes to that malt. And then there is just a little kiss of wheat in there, so 2% wheat. So this is a 3 grain rye, but pretty different than pretty much any other mash bill that I've seen out there. So what does malt bring to the table outside of just the flavor? It brings texture, right? One of the things that rye lacks the most is longevity on the palate, is the finish. And so having that malt in there really kind of fortifies it and allows it to sit on your palate long enough that you can taste what's going on.
It's very pretty. There's a lot going on there for sure. I really like that.
I like pretty things. I like making pretty things.
Well, you certainly did there. What do you guys think? Anybody get any notes? Like light and grassy.
Definitely grassy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Perfumey.
But there's a nice
Maybe
sweetness there too.
there's like a little bit of green apple I'm getting in there
Hmm.
too, which I really like.
A little crunch.
Mm.
But just like very different from what you might expect if you were drinking a rye whiskey. If you were drinking, if someone was like, here, have this rye whiskey, I mean, I personally would be like, whoa, what's going on with this? Something is different here.
And this one's the Van Duzen.
Van Duzen.
Van
This is,
Duzen.
yeah, this is the one that's named after a river.
A river,
Yeah,
not a tree.
not a tree.
The Van Duzen River. And
Hmm.
this is also a limited edition.
Hmm. Yeah, this is probably something that we make in the smallest amount.
Okay. But you do like an annual release of it? Do you call it the same thing or you call it different
We
things?
call it the same thing.
So you have like an annual release of
Yeah.
limited release of Van Duzen.
Hmm. Pretty limited.
I was going to say good because I liked that one to stick around.
Yeah. We're still making it. Yeah, we just moved into a new facility, so we have grain silos now. So we're going to be getting our first silo of malt at the beginning of September, and we're going to be making some high malted rye. We're going to be making some high malted wheat whiskey. We're going to be making. That was me. I put 1 day in. That's like 14 barrels. It's not a lot. So we got to have a little something like that. And then we're gonna make some single malt as well.
You're just getting fancy over there, but
I'm a fancy lady.
I guess so.
Can't help myself.
There's no single malt fans here, I can see.
Well, I'm curious to hear some of your opinions on American single malt, right? As brand new category as of
Lots,
this year.
lots of fans. We did have up the American Single Malt panel here
Oh, cool.
with Jared Himstad and I think it was Amanda Beckwith, and there's a bunch of the like the so there is a very high concentration of people in here who love American single malts, and we've been into that for a while now.
Hmm.
Lisa's commenting on the difference between
Hmm.
bourbon and single malt and allowing for, I'll let you take over from there.
For me, American single malt is you don't know what you're going to get at this point. Like you open a bottle and every bottle is pretty drastically different
Sure.
stylistically from the one before it. And you might like one of those and you might not like another.
Sure.
And I love that because it is like the wild west of whiskey, right? It's going to be all over the place. There isn't a standard yet, in my opinion. I mean, I might
That's
just,
true.
if there is a standard, please let me know.
That's true.
But
To me, it's also having had a lot of them, like like they're somewhat regional. Like
mm,
if you get like a single malt from Texas, you know you're gonna get some wood in the face, right?
Sure.
Because that's single malt for Texas. If you know who works at Virginia Distilling and what they do, you know you're gonna get some softer notes blended in.
Hmm.
And then there's Westland,
Hmm.
who we're big fans of from
Sure.
up there as well. And they all just seem like they have exactly what you're saying, but it's to me, it just seems, correct me if I'm wrong, like I could
Mhm.
be wrong, but it seems like it's almost regional on how those profiles come out.
Part of that regionality comes from the aging process, right? Like the actual climate is impacting.
Yep.
It's not, but part of it, I'm sure, is the decision making before that. But Texas can't help itself. It's going to be extracted. That's
Sure.
just part of aging whiskey in Texas,
Course.
for sure. And
The appeal.
yeah, absolutely, definitely. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, I always know a Texas whiskey for sure.
Yeah. I think we could spot this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I agree. I think that regionality can play a role, but I don't know necessarily that they're making all the same choices outside of
True.
just the impact of climate. Particularly for like the Pacific West versus like what's happening in like California. So like Westland, Westward, they I think are doing things a little bit more classically, slightly more kind of in line with what people might think international single malt is. Not exactly. They're definitely doing their own thing for sure. But some of the things that they're doing, I think, are more in line with that than some of the really hitting it way out,
Yeah.
doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
And there's a lot of curveballs out there too. Just, I mean, even like MGP, right? So you have the infamous 95.5,
Hmm.
but then they also did, 49.51s. We've had a couple of those come through here. We call them
Sure.
like halvesies.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's a new famous whiskey by a famous female singer that
Oh.
is a 5149
Hmm.
Beyonce's whiskey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you're right. It's like the Wild West, but then there's all these different components. I guess like any other whiskey, really, like all the mash bills and all that stuff plays
Sure. Except
parts.
for it has to be 100% malted barley.
Oh, that's right, for single malt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to.
On the Van Duzen, it's 94. Yeah, 94. So, good question.
Yeah, sorry. I went back to rye for a second there, didn't I?
That's okay.
Rye single malt. Sure.
That's fine. We're just chatting.
Yeah,
Um, so are you ready for the next rye?
please.
This is actually my favorite product that we make. And I guess it's not every year because that it does vary from year to year. But for the most part, Rocket Top is my favorite product that we make. It's our bottled and bond rye. I'm a sucker for rye, of course. But this really, if I had to kind of personify what I want a rye to taste like, it's this. It is very herbal. It's got a lot of tea-like nature to it, almost medicinal. Um, I think there's like a menthol quality that people identify differently. Some people say cardamom, some people say mint or peppermint, and then some people say, for me, because I'm from Northern California, I think eucalyptus.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what resonates with me. But it's the same note that we're talking about when we say all those different descriptors for it.
I get all of that.
Whew, aced it. But there's still a sweetness here to help balance it out, right? It's not so
Absolutely.
astringent or so aggressive, particularly for a rye at 100 proof. I think that's quite still soft on the palate, still sippable. It has some nice longevity as well. Our like standard rye mash bill is 90 percent rye, 5% wheat, and 5% malted barley. And so this is pretty close to that. I think this one's like 89% rye and then a little bit more malted barley and 5% wheat. So it's pretty close. But that's like our standard. So whenever we say 95.5, everyone thinks we're talking about MGP, but really it's
Because
95.5, not 95.5.
I think that's when I flip back to rye. I
Hmm.
had rye in the mind.
Hmm. Sure. I mean, we are drinking rye, so that's fair.
Mm,
What do we think of this?
that's really nice.
Again, so different than that first rye that we had, right? Like all of that malted barley that you really get in that first rye is just so, this is really focused more on the rye.
I'd be hard pressed to pick one.
They're just different, you
There.
know?
Yeah,
It's like, what's better, an apple or an orange, right? They're not really,
they're just different.
they're just different.
It's like trying to pick a child. Can't really.
Not out loud anyway.
Well, it depends upon the day.
hmm And honestly, when anyone asks me like what my favorite whiskey is, I say some version of that. It does depend on the day. Depends on
It
my
really does.
mood, the temperature, what I ate that day,
Yep,
like all of that. It kind of factors into what will satisfy my thirst at any given moment.
absolutely. I think we're kind of all in that same. What's your favorite whiskey? Well, what time is it? Where am I? Who am I with? My favorite whiskey is always the one that I'm sharing with somebody.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Like,
The
oh,
one
this
that
one,
I'm drinking.
the one that I'm drinking, the one that's in my hand,
I
right?
hope that's true.
And especially when I'm like traveling overseas, my favorite whiskey is whatever one's from that country.
Mm, smart,
Right?
smart.
Don't
Yeah,
want to cause any riots.
that's right. Yeah. Hot Rocket Top really hits the spot. I guess it is my favorite today so far. I haven't had the last one yet, but
Well,
pretty confident that it's gonna be the Rocket
that's
Top.
that's your favorite.
Yeah,
Well, you would know because you've had these how many times? Once or twice?
just a few.
Just
It's
a
well,
few.
you know what's really funny is like, obviously I taste through all the different components. I do taste it at the end to make sure that they've married together, but I'm working on like the next
Yeah, yeah,
batches
of
of these.
course.
And
Sure.
so like sometimes when I come back out into market and I taste them, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's really good. Or maybe I would have done this thing a little bit differently. But it's always fun to revisit. One of the things I've done two tastings that I like two tasting setups that I've loved the most. The first one was verticals of the bottled and bond. So like tasting several years of the bottled and bonds together. That was an incredible tasting because it really gives you insight into how different each one of those releases are, and really fun to kind of see the progression because the first release we ever did was really the first year of distillation that we were doing. There was a little bit of distillation that was happening in 2015, but when we really started knowing what we were doing was 2016, and so you really kind of appreciate the progression of what was going on the distillation side when you taste through verticals of the bottled and bond. And then the second one was we did a flight of all the bourbons that we make. So obviously this wheated bourbon, the Screaming Titan, our Pipe Dream, our core Pipe Dream, a Cask Pipe Dream, the bottled and bond, and then we also have a high rye bourbon as well called Devil's Tower. And what a fun tasting to do to kind of like dive deep into how diverse bourbon can be.
Sure.
We are talking about that it's kind of a narrow spectrum for most people, but there is space there to kind of like do something a little bit different and to stand out with the SKUs that you're doing. And that was a really fun flight. Also, an incredible educational tool for explaining a lot more of the process of what we're doing by kind of explaining the choices that are being made in each one of those individual whiskeys.
Sounds like a really rough job.
Yeah, super tough. Yeah. All right. We're ready for some cask strength.
I feel sad because this is our last one.
We can go through
We'll
again.
keep going.
Never has to end. So cask strength. Who here's a fan of cask strength? Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
quite a few.
for sure. I find it fascinating, cask strength. I think that there's been like this real big embracing of it as a category. And I have my own reasons for loving cask strength, but I am not like a stronger is better type of person. I've had 130, 140 proof whiskeys that I thought were a dream to drink. So soft,
Absolutely.
so
Sure.
beautiful, really well executed, thoughtful. And then I've had like 110 proof whiskeys where I'm like, no, this needs water. This needs something to kind
Absolutely.
of like bring it under control. And so it is a case by case for me when it comes to cask strength
Same.
whiskey. And it's not just more is better. Again, this is in my opinion. But what I do love about Cask Strength is again this kind of like educational moment of seeing into what we do as distillers. We are tasting things at Cask Strength. When I'm putting blends together, I'm tasting and smelling at Cask Strength and putting that blend together. And then when we kind of are doing product development for R&D or even for some of these blends, we'll do proofing trials to kind of see where you can get the most out of that whiskey. At what proof point really showcases what we want it to showcase flavor profile wise, because there's two main factors of solubility when it comes to the chemical composition of whiskey. And what are they? You thought you were done answering questions, you're not done. What factors into the solubility of spirits and whiskey in particular?
The solubility of whiskey.
Of the chemicals, the molecular structure of the whiskey.
All right. I'm out of my element, guys. You gotta help me out here.
We're nerds, right? I get I guarantee you know the answers to these. One is
Air and water.
water because it has to do with the concentration. So once you start playing around with the concentration, then you'll have molecules falling in and out of solution. They'll interact with your palate differently. The second one is temperature. So it can colder, hotter, and you can imagine this, right? When something gets hotter, it volatilizes more. When it's colder, it's condensing. It like you can really understand why these two things factor into how we're tasting what's going on in the whiskey. And that is what I love about Cask Strength is because it gives you more runway to play around with concentration in particular. You get to be the scientist. You get to be the blender when it comes to Cask Strength because you can add water and see the true breadth, that rainbow of flavor that whiskey has to offer, not just necessarily at this one point in its existence. So it embraces what I love most about the spirits industry, which is this invitation to participate as a consumer. With wine and beer, you're given a finished product. Maybe you pair it with something lovely, great. But with spirits, we ask more of you. We ask you to tell us how you want to drink it. We ask you to kind of be a little bit more involved. And again, it goes down to this industry being about people. So we want that conversation. We want that dialogue. We want that feedback. And that's what I've always loved about spirits is that it really embraces the drinker of it to kind of be responsible for their own enjoyment of it. It's not only on us. We get to have shared responsibility of that.
Right. You don't want to drink something that you don't like. You want to drink what you like when you like it, how you like it.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's the way it should be.
Exactly. And correct me if I'm wrong. So like, I'm not one of those guys that everything has to be cast strength or
Sure.
but personally, like I have done some home blending in the past and I have found that it's actually easier to do cast strength blending than it is otherwise. Um, to me, it seems like the higher the alcohol volume, not always, but it just seems like if it's cast strength, it's like a flavor delivery system.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's more flavor there. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but that's just what it seems like to me sometimes.
Yeah, I call cask strength like an exclamation point, right? It's like whiskey with an exclamation point. It's very like more concentrated, right? It's like a
Sure.
more concentrated flavor. And certainly, it has more going on in that sip than something that has more water in it, right?
Mhm.
That makes sense to us.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say it's necessarily always better. You know what I mean? Like when you're thinking about things, particularly in a blending spectrum, you're thinking about cohesion. You're thinking about marriage. You're thinking about how the totality is better, more than just the sum of its parts. And so proof is a part of that equation. You know what I mean? Like how best can we bring these things and flavors, textures, aromatics is a huge one for me. The number one assessment that I have for any spirit, judging, blending, whatever, is aromatics, 100%. I do the majority of my blending by my nose. And then secondary is texture. And then honestly, the third thing is actually how it tastes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's It's such an interesting and dynamic. There is science there for sure. There's actually some really interesting science on the wine side when it comes to alcohol percentage and our perception of flavor. There's less, at least publicly available. I'm sure there's plenty of independent research that goes into this, into the on the spirit side and like what we actually can experience and taste at different percentages of alcohol.
I agree with all of that. And, you know, speaking of things that I think are, I think one of the things that appeals to me and probably some other people as well is science of it
Hmm.
is part of it. But then there's also the flip side of that coin, which is the magic side,
Hmm.
right? So like you're getting like a little bit of both. It's an art form. It
Yeah.
really is. Like it appeals to your senses, right? And there's no wrong answer, and everybody has. It's very subjective.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that's one of the things that really appeals to spirits with me.
Yeah. I don't think you could be a good distiller or a good blender or good maker if you didn't embrace both. If you don't embrace the science, you're not going to be able to replicate, what you've done in the past.
Sure.
And if you don't embrace the art, you really lose the heart of what you're trying to achieve, which is something that's enjoyable and a consumable, right? And again, kind of connected.
And I would say that those things, both the science and the art, come across in your children up here for sure.
Thank you.
I get that. I was not that I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, but I wasn't quite what I expected tonight, and I
Mm.
got that out of all of this. So hats off to you guys. It was fantastic stuff. Um, let's do this. Gauge the audience a little bit here. So we have three bourbons and three ryes. Let's start with the bourbons. Anybody want to vote on Lauren's favorite child? Or like which one of those three are your favorite child? So you have the bourbons, right? So there's the Screaming Titan, Pipe Dream, and Grizzly Beast. So raise your hand for your favorite. Screaming Titan. Got a couple. Grizzly Beast. Oh, there's a whole bunch there, yeah. And then Pipe Dream. Pretty pretty well divided,
Yeah.
right?
I love that, right?
Yeah, there's
Again,
something for everything. Everyone.
100%.
Yeah,
When you have options, again, it kind of like initiates that conversation. Like, why do you like that better?
right.
What is it about it that really kind of like embraced you and got you excited about it, all that kind of thing? It's really interesting. And as you said, it's pretty individual, right?
Yeah, so
So,
completely subjective. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm always the most curious about kind of the why behind it. And sometimes people feel a little self-conscious when they're talking to me about it specifically, but I always love hearing it. I always want to know why. I'm a big question asker for sure.
It's also part of the teacher part of you.
Yeah, what? Absolutely. Like, why is that?
All right, let's go with the rise. So raise your hand for your favorite. Van Duzen, a whole bunch there. Rocket Top. Wow, quite a few more. Emerald Giant Cask Strength.
Hmm.
And there's a few there as well. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really even speak about the Emerald Giant pretty much, but this is the same blend as our core, just undiluted. So this is around 115 proof. And I think for that proof on a rye, very drinkable. You can still taste everything that's going on in there. And still soft, but kind of gives you just a little bit more of that spice. It fortifies it with the sensation of it.
All right. Who's got questions for Lauren? Any other questions out there?
Are you begging me to ask you questions? Is that?
We could do that too. I got questions.
I'm just kidding.
Is Redwood doing anything with any different types of casks? And then I'll throw my own question on top of that. One of the things I wanted to ask you, have you done any Redwood? Like a Redwood stave
For
for
sure.
sure.
Redwood is just such a bad wood for,
Sure.
it's just like not a good wood
I get it.
for extracting. It just doesn't, it's not good. I'm sure that there'll be something at some point we'll be forced, but it's just like not the best wood for a flavor extraction. Are we playing with different casks? I would say typically when people ask that question, they're thinking about like secondary casks, right? They're like thinking about like, are you doing sherry or cognac finish, wine finishes? There'll be some of that, but what we're more interested in the barrel space is actually wood seasoning, wood treatments, and different cooperages. So because we are such a blend heavy house, we do get to have a variety of different cooperages, the places that we're getting our barrels from. And we've played around a lot with seasoning. So I have done like
Interesting.
an hour plus long dialogue just on wood seasoning and its impact on whiskey. So I won't go too deep into it now. But essentially,
If we had the time, we would let you go.
yeah,
Dr. Bill Lumsden came in here and did a whole class on just wood,
yeah.
which was really interesting. It's really cool.
Yeah, I did a master class on seasoning and we did a tasting of different whiskeys, everything about them exactly the same, except that the wood that was used in the barrels was seasoned for different periods of time. So seasoning is after the wood's been cut down and cut into staves, they literally leave it out open to the elements. And the reason for that is because wood is pretty hard. And so it needs to be able to kind of start to honestly decompose a little bit and degrade a little bit to break down and to free up some of the wood sugars and things like that that you're wanting to kind of pull out. But there's a lot of things that go on. There's a lot of factors that impact it. Again, I'm not going to go into it right now.
Kiln dried and all that stuff we've heard.
Well, I'm not talking about kiln. This is way before kilning. This is fungus. This is UV. This is water. So nothing to do with kiln yet.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But the number one things that happens during seasoning is actually tannin extraction. So when you're having water run through, it's actually pulling out tannin from your wood. If you've ever done like a new construction project, or you've seen like a brand new bench and it rains and there's like that pile of brown goo at the bottom, those are tannins. Yeah, that is getting pulled out. And then, of course, kilning is a part of the process because you have a very specific water concentration that you're looking to achieve in wood so that it doesn't leak. That is true. But the seasoning part happens before that. Anyway, what was I even talking about?
Well, this was your last chance to ask them questions.
Cask
Yeah.
strength. Sorry. What are we doing with casks? So we're playing around with different durations of that seasoning process. So like I'd say industry standard is only 6 months of aging your staves. So we do like a 12, a 24, and a 36 month seasoning process. And we typically now choose, depending on what we're making, either 36 or 24-month seasoned. Sorry, when I looked at you, I remembered what the question was. hmm I think it's softer. So the question was, does this longer seasoning make it sweeter? And I think the real answer is it makes it less astringent. So it's not necessarily more sweetness, it's less astringency because more of the tannins have been removed. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, last chance. Anyone else? All right, let's give it up for Lauren.
Cheers. Thank you
Thank you.
guys. Yeah, appreciate it.
That was awesome. Fantastic. All right, let me shut off the microphone for 1 second, or let me pause turn off the recording.